everybody, this week we have a very special episode in celebration of 2 years since we started ANN News Kids. We are talking about the Russia-Ukraine war, the Australian cricketer's death, and coronavirus statistics. The country of the week is Solomon Islands, and Hitesh Vipat was the first to guess it. Congratulations! And we have a very exciting person for the Premature Career segment, as it's the 52nd one. We are talking to Omar Samra, who is an adventurer and entrepreneur and has climbed the 7 summits among his many achievements. I really hope you enjoy, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share and comment below. To celebrate our 2nd anniversary, we have 2 special videos. This week is the first part and next week is the second. This week, as it's our 52nd A Premature Career, we are doing a special segment on space, and next week we have something extremely special planned. Russia has officially invaded Ukraine, and both sides are fighting really hard. Many people are fleeing Ukraine, more than 1 million actually, and even Russia now. Half of the people are going to Poland, which is neighboring Ukraine. Russia has already captured the Ukrainian city Kherson and is also attacking the capital Kyiv and the second largest city, Kharkiv. Many countries have stopped exporting to Russia, and Russia has already seized the largest nuclear plant in Europe, as well as the Chernobyl plant, which is the place of the Chernobyl disaster in 1986 in Ukraine. Shane Warne, a legendary Australian cricketer, died at the age of 52 of a suspected heart attack. He was one of the best cricketers of all time, and he was a leg spinner. He helped Australia win the 1999 50-over World Cup of cricket. Australia's Prime Minister has also offered a state funeral for him. Coronavirus cases and deaths around the world are rapidly decreasing. Since the beginning of the year, the coronavirus daily cases have gone from about 3 million to 1 million. The top 5 countries with the most coronavirus cases in the last 7 days are South Korea, Germany, Vietnam, Russia, and Japan. And the top 5 countries with the most coronavirus deaths in the past 7 days are USA, Russia, Brazil, Indonesia, and Mexico. Thank you. Hi everybody, this week for the 52nd A Premature Career segment, we are talking to Mr. Omar Samra, an adventurer and entrepreneur from Egypt. He has climbed the 7 summits and gone to the North and South Pole, as well as done many other things like being chosen to go to space and spending time in a moon simulation. I really hope you enjoy, because he has amazing things to tell about his journey and advice. Thank you.
نيجي دلوقتي على قمة جبل إيفرست 8850 متر بعد شهرين من الكفاح والمعاناة. قدرت فعلا إن أنا أوصل وأرفع علم مصر الحمد لله، كله تمام بخير. سعيد جدا، بس في نفس الوقت لازم أنزل بسرعة لأن الجو ابتدى يقلب، مش عاوزين نقع في خطر. أول مصري ومصر أم الدنيا.
My name is Omar Samra. I am 43 years old. I consider myself an adventurer and entrepreneur. I spent a good part of my life climbing mountains and going on expeditions to the North and South Pole. And my most recent adventures have been trying to row across the Atlantic Ocean in a small boat, and also spent 15 days in 2018 on a simulated moon base, where I was part of a research project where we were studying human habitability in space. So, because as you know, humanity is trying to become a multiplanetary species, including establishing a base on the moon and Mars. And in order to do that, we have to simulate these environments on Earth to learn how can we cope with each other and also how we solve problems there. And on the business side, the entrepreneurship side, I run a handful of small businesses. The one I focus on the most is in the field of tourism and adventure travel. And I've been doing that for almost 14 years. In a previous life, before I started my own business, I was working in the field of banking and finance. So I spent a considerable amount of time working in between London and Hong Kong, working in that field. But then I decided to leave it behind to follow my passion.
Wow, thank you. And can you tell us more about your adventures and also your life as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, sure. I started, my first experience, actually the first time I ever saw snow, I was 15 years old. That was in Switzerland. Because I grew up in Egypt, and obviously it's a very hot country, and we very hardly receive any snow, at least not in Cairo, maybe in the mountains in Sinai. And so this was it's an experience that left a lot of impression on me. I climbed my first mountain when I was there. It's a small mountain. And then I fell in love with climbing, and I had the dream then to reach the highest mountain in the world, which is Mount Everest. It took me 12 years in order to be able to put that dream into reality. I ended up climbing Everest in 2007. And I decided when I climbed it that I was still very passionate about this path and I wanted to do more. So I started setting myself sort of more and more goals within that realm. So I climbed the highest mountain on every continent, which is something called the Seven Summits. And then I skied to the North and South Pole. And then did a few other adventures that a couple of them that I had just told you about. And my entrepreneurship journey started in 2009. I was working in the corporate world before, and I never thought that I would ever become an entrepreneur, because I thought, those people who are entrepreneurs, I used to sort of read about them and watch them on shows and things. And I thought, to be an entrepreneur, you have to have like a special skill or an idea or something that I didn't have. But then I realized when I graduated from my master's program, which was in 2007, I decided to take the risk and started up my own business. And I realized that I should have done that probably before, because I realized that the most important things that I learned in that journey are things I learned on the job, learned by making mistakes and just sort of trying. So that's definitely like a piece of advice that I would give anyone. Like if you're thinking about something, that you're passionate about it, and you feel that maybe you're not ready, you're never going to really be ready unless you start. And then the way to be ready is to actually go through it and learn from all the ups and downs that come along the way, which is part of the journey. And once I started my own business, a few years later, I ended up starting other businesses because I had broken sort of the obstacle in my head about the fact that I couldn't be an entrepreneur. And now, I've managed to start a number of successful initiatives.
Wow. That is a very interesting journey. Mm-hmm. And what do you like most about what you do?
What I like most about what I do is that it keeps me very close to nature. My work is very much about adventures, but it's also about conservation and sustainability. So when we do trips in different places, the most important thing is to make sure that that experience or that trip is actually a positive experience for the host community that we visit. Yeah. So that's the idea about sustainable travel. So how can travel not just be fun for the traveler, but also a positive experience for the people that live in that community from a socioeconomic level, but also the conservation part. So, when we're doing a trip, we also understand that we will have an impact on the surrounding environment, because obviously the best thing in the world is just to leave nature to be, right? So if you visit it, you have to have a responsibility that you want to make sure that you leave no trace, and you want to make sure sometimes that your impact is positive. So perhaps, of course, you will leave everything the way you found it, but also perhaps you use the learnings from that experience and from the content that you will create from the places that you're at to help raise awareness about the fragility of the environment, about climate change, about like all the things that we can do to protect it. So on one hand, the best thing for Earth is basically for humans not to live on it, then everything will flourish. But since we're here, we have to do our best by basically like having the minimal amount of impact possible, but also realizing that a lot of people still need to be educated about those types of impacts and climate change and so on, and just to use the resources that we have to be able to do that.
Wow. And you said that you spent some time in a moon simulator. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my dream to go to space was something that I had way before even I dreamed of climbing Mount Everest. So I was probably 7 years old when I first thought that I would love for one day to become an astronaut. I obviously didn't really realize what that actually meant, but that dream stayed with me for so long. And I think my adventures like climbing Everest and going to the poles, I think that was sort of myself trying to, explore the ends of the earth. Like, since I'm on Earth and I can't get out of Earth for now, like, let me try and explore it to the absolute fullest. But the dream of going to space sort of never went away. But being from this part of the world, from Egypt, we don't necessarily have like a fully fledged space program. No one from Egypt has been to space. It's not something that we think about. It's not something that is in our consciousness as a nation. So it was much harder for me to be able to go down that route. In 2013, I was part of I found a competition that was announced where people would apply and they would go through a process, and eventually they would select a number of people to go to space. And so I applied, and I realized that 2 million people applied. So I was a bit discouraged in the beginning, but I decided to keep trying anyway. And eventually I was shortlisted out of the 2 million to 110 people who they flew to the United States. And there, basically, they put us through a series of tests, physical, psychological, knowledge tests. And in the end, I was selected to go on this commercial space mission. And I was supposed to go sometime in 2017, 18. What happened then was, because space is a very new field, it requires a lot of funding and there's a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of the companies that start in the space field, sometimes they can't go on, sometimes they run out of money. So the company that I was supposed to go with, which were building this spacecraft called the Lynx Mark II, which was supposed to be a spacecraft that takes off like from a regular runway, reaches space, and then lands again on the runway. That company unfortunately went broke in 2017, after I had done all the trainings and all the preparation that I needed to go to space. So basically, that was unfortunate. But with any dream that you have, it's you have to understand that setbacks do happen, and you just have to keep doing your best all the time and not have these things like stop you from trying. And so I decided, okay, what can I do? I already have this training and already I have this passion and knowledge about this thing. What else can I do? So I ended up like trying to take courses. I ended up like applying to different things. And then eventually I got selected for this, what they call it, like an analog mission. So an analog is a simulation in space terms. And you have right now in the world right now, there is like a few places around the world that run Mars or moon simulations. And this one was a moon simulation. So for 15 days, we were in a sort of a habitat that was enclosed within a bigger aircraft hangar. And that hangar was closed completely. So it was completely dark, pitch black. And we lived in this base within the hangar. And we simulated or pretended that the space between the hangar, between the base and the walls of the hangar outside is space. So because when you would venture out, you would see nothing but darkness in front of you. And so we would simulate it in the sense that we would put on space suits, that we would go to the airlock, we would go out, do our EVA, which is our extravehicular activity, which is basically like spacewalking. We were a crew of 5. Each one had their own responsibilities. I was the vice commander of the mission. All of the people with me on the mission were scientists and researchers. I was the only person without a science background, and which was interesting because, with humanity becoming a multi-planetary species, it opens up space for so many people. Before, it used to be just engineers and scientists and Air Force pilots and things like that. But now, when we establish bases on the moon or on other planets, we're going to need, teachers, we're going to need doctors, we're going to need nurses, we're going to need poets, entertainers. We're going to need, everything, the best of what humanity has to offer, and in terms of diversity, but also in terms of like the values that we bring. So it's an exciting time because it means that space in the future is going to become for everybody, and everyone who's passionate about that will have an opportunity to do it. So this experience for me, those 15 days were really important because it gave me the self-belief that I can play a role in that field, even though I'm not coming from a traditional background that is usually goes to space. But I also learned so much. I learned so much about living for those 15 days in a very confined environment with a small group of people, where we had to solve all our problems together, which is very similar to what will happen in space, right? Like you will not have the assistance of Earth or like people around you. Any problem that happens is a problem that you will have to fix yourself. Also, a lot of people, when they are in this kind of environment, they get too stressed, or they get, they're not able to perform because they get too lonely, or they get, feeling that they are, confined in one space. So it was also an ability to test myself in this scenario. And I was very lucky to have like a really nice crew of people with me. Actually, one of our crew members, her name is Dr. Cyan Proctor. She actually just went to space a few months ago on a mission called Inspiration 4. And it was actually made into a show on Netflix with the same name. And we were very proud of her, obviously because of what she did up there. It was the first civilian mission to space, and they orbited Earth for a few days, and they went even higher than the International Space Station.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds like an amazing experience. And what is your advice to kids?
My advice to kids, if we're talking about, let me talk about space since I just talked about it, but I'll talk about everything else in general. So my advice about space is, if there are kids out there that are watching this, that are interested in space in any shape or form, like, this is your time. Like, this is the first time in history where we can see that in our lifetimes, human beings will be able to go to space, like 100 years ago when people were thinking about flying, like people in the 1920s when planes started flying, people were thinking, this is something that's so dangerous, or there's something that's, so like there's very few of it, and it was very expensive, and you have to be like really adventurous and really kind of a risk taker to do it. And now, of course, jumping on a plane is something that is completely normal. And as you know, the pace of technology speeds up all the time, right? So what took 100 years, if it took 80 to 100 years for us to go from no space flight or something not open for everybody to now thousands and of flights leaving every single day, this will happen now in almost 10 to 20 years. So, and the price will go down, so that it will become more affordable, just the same way that happened with flight. So that's in terms of space. We had also the James Webb telescope. This just replaced the Hubble telescope, and that's something that's very exciting, because once it reaches its orbit and once it starts to function, this telescope can see so far into the cosmos that it will actually be able to see back in time. Because as you know, like when we see things that are really far, the way we see it is because the light from it travels to us, and then when the light comes to us, we can then see it, right? So the things that are really far, like the stars that we see in the night sky, some of it, when we see a shooting star, that shooting star is not burning now. This has probably happened hundreds or thousands of years ago, or sometimes millions of years ago, and we're just seeing it now because the light is reaching us. So because that telescope is very strong and is able to see so far, it will be able to look so far from Earth that what we will see, will be able to see things that happened many, many years ago. And so we'll be able to see back in time. Maybe even one day we'll be able to see to the origin of the universe. And that will help us answer so many questions and help us understand as human beings, like where we fit in the universe. But in general, like for those who maybe not interested in space or interested also in other things, I would say that the best piece of advice that I have, the one thing that I would say is the thing that someone else told me before, which is like never believe those people who will tell you what you can and what you cannot do. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you're the only person that knows how far you can go. And sometimes we ourselves are the ones that keep ourselves back, because we make ourselves believe that we can do the things that we can do. If you look at my story about somebody, from Egypt, coming from a place where people didn't necessarily care so much about adventure, about space, about, extreme places like Everest and the poles and stuff like that. And I forgot to tell you also in the beginning of the session that I used to be asthmatic as a child. So I was severely asthmatic. I had very hard time breathing. And it was purely just, believing in my own dreams and believing in myself that made me dare to dream and dare to kind of put these big goals in front of me. And I think being able to have the confidence to set yourself big goals is half the journey. And then once you put yourself in that place and you understand that the road is going to be long and it's going to be hard and there's going to be ups and downs, but you take pleasure and joy out of the journey itself, good and bad, then anything that you want to do will eventually be possible.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for everything.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and for your 50-second episode to see it when it comes out and watch the rest of the shows. So please send me the links when you get it. And sure. It's great that you guys. It's really, really great what you're doing, because I'm sure it's a great experience for yourselves, but I'm sure also like so many people will benefit from you allowing other people to share their stories and their journeys with your friends and your community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything and have a great day.
Same, you too. Take care. Bye.
Les îles Salomon sont une nation située en Océanie. Sa capitale est Honiara et sa population est de 869 000 habitants. Pendant la Seconde Guerre mondiale, les îles Salomon étaient occupées par le Japon. Le premier qui a découvert l'île est l'explorateur espagnol Alvaro de Mondana en 1568. La forêt tropicale dense couvre 90% de l'île. Aujourd'hui, les îles sont populaires auprès les plongeurs à cause des nombreux bateaux et épaves de la Seconde Guerre mondiale.